Hi again, everyone. So in this video, I'm going to be designing the tree on my card. If you maybe have noticed, every year I just do a very simple design on my card. It's just a tree so that I can kind of focus on the technique instead of focusing on what the design is going to be. So this year, as you know, we're doing a fabric card. So I'm going to put a little fabric tree on my fabric base. So we're going to start with just one of our bases, and then what I'm going to do is a kind of like a green triangle and then a brown rectangle for the trunk. So let's start with the trunk, since that's going to actually layer underneath the green tree. And so for that, I've gathered a bunch of my fabric scraps, just anything I had that was brown. So I've got tons and tons of scraps just from various projects, and I'm just going to pick some of the ones I like the best and start cutting them up into little tree trunks. So let's grab this polka dot. I love this little polka dot one. That's so cute. And so I'm not really going to measure. I'm just going to cut pieces that look about right to me. Various sizes. And actually, with all that fringe on the edge of that one, I'm not going to use the rest of that. I think, yeah. This will be tall enough. That one's cute too. So I've got quite a bit of quilting cotton, which is like what I'm cutting at now. But then I've got a few others that are different textures. So I've got some like tan felt, and I think adding a little texture onto the card is going to be really nice. Just give it an extra element to just, just something. And then I've got, I don't know, this is some weird polyester with sort of a texture. I don't know, what do you call that? A chevron houndstooth? No, it's not houndstooth. I don't know. Some weird design on this brown polyester. This fabric is the worst. I'm not going to ever use it for anything. But I don't know about you. When people find out that I sew, they're like, oh, here, take all my scraps. So I end up with all this weird stuff. But then I use it for stuff like this, so that's fine. Let's see, what else have I got? Ugh, I don't even really know what this is. It's kind of, maybe it's a flannel. I don't know. This feels disgusting, but it'll be perfect for this because it's kind of fuzzy on one side, which is a nice fun texture. And then the other side, it's also kind of, it's more smooth, but it's a little textured too. So that gives me a couple options. Like you see, just really no rhyme or reason to this, just something that will give me a tree trunk. Ugh, I really don't like this fabric, but I think it'll sew down well, which is kind of what I want. I don't want something that's going to be super tricky to sew. I have some knit over in my stash here, which I may use just for a little variety, but it's kind of harder to sew. So there's our base, and we're just going to put a little tree trunk down at the bottom. Oh, that's going to look really cute. That's that weird textured polyester. All right, and then we'll stitch on some of our trunks. Okay, so here I am at my sewing machine. I'm ready to sew on my tree trunk pieces to my card bases. I've got my sewing machine just set up, standard setup. I usually have my walking foot on here just because I feel like it feeds my fabric through it a little easier. I think this is just a standard needle, all-purpose. I've got some brown thread in my sewing machine. I've got the same color here in the bobbin I do up in the spool, and I'll thread that back. Use my purple thing to get my threads out. Any of you have this? Like, this is a great little tool, but I mean, you could just use a chopstick. Okay, I've also got my sewing machine set up on the zigzag pattern, and I've got it, kind of wide so I can sort of applique this on. So I'm just gonna set my fabric onto my base, my tree trunk fabric onto my base, just kind of eyeballing it in the center. I don't want these all to be exactly the same, so that's why I'm going to do the eyeballing. And then I line it up here with, there's a little red line on my presser foot that shows where the center line of the stitch is. So I'm going to kind of put that just, I'm going to line it up just so my zigzag just goes over the edge and holds it down. So there, I've got my setup, and I'm just going to sew. And I like to start slow to make sure I'm lined up. And then I turn the corner, adjusting as I go. Like I said, I don't want these to be like super perfect. I want it to look like a handmade craft. So if it goes a little wonky one way or the other, I think that's fine. All right, and then I'm not going to sew the top edge because that's going to be covered up by my tree piece. And then I'll just cut it. My sewing machine has a little cutter right here, there. Otherwise, just, you know, cut it off with scissors. And then I'm going to trim my loose ends. Boop. 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 And there we go. So you can see it's sewn on with a nice little zigzag edge, and that's going to keep the edges from fraying because, you know, it's covered up by stitching, but it's a quick, easy stitch to get my results that I want. And now I'm going to do a bunch